Very, very true. And some great SEC talk. I think we are, and to kind of transition into our second quarter topic as we sort of do a quick, top team overview. For sure right now, no one is arguing about Georgia or Alabama #1 and Georgia #2. Do you think that, assuming an undefeated Alabama plays an undefeated Georgia in the SEC title game, if no matter what the score, like if both teams are undefeated, do you think that they will both end up being in the playoffs, or at least have a great chance of both teams being in the playoffs?
I think they
either if Georgia clips Alabama or vice versa.
I think they would both have. I think it'd be a very good chance they both make it. But as we know, it's very dependent on who else is in the field. I know this coming Saturday we got a top 5 matchup between Iowa and Penn State, and we're going to see if either one of those guys are for real too. And they both have some pretty good wins, but then again, some of their big wins over Wisconsin are seeming less and less quality. If Iowa beats Penn State by 2 or 3 scores, I think they will solidify themselves as a legitimately good team. And then it's just going to come down to Iowa versus Ohio State to see what happens in the Big Ten. But if everyone else cannibalizes each other, I'm someone who, again, has a soft spot in my heart for Oregon. And when they picked off Ohio State early in the season, I think it was game 1, actually, I was pretty excited about that. I thought, okay, maybe they finally put the pieces together. But then they just got beat by Stanford in overtime. I mean, it was ugly, and it didn't seem like the same team. So you wonder, did they just pull a rabbit out of the hat against Ohio State? Is Ohio State not as good as we think? Did Stanford just make those right plays that we talked about earlier? I don't know, and that's half the fun. But I think Oregon is significantly damaged. So who else is going to take that spot? Cincinnati? Maybe. Are they for real? I have no idea. Notre Dame, they might be 4-1, but they got into some real squeakers with teams that you would think are vastly inferior. So is Cincinnati that good? We don't know. And it really comes down to, I think, does Cincinnati stay undefeated? And does Iowa or Penn State really pull away with the Big Ten? If they don't, if there is some cannibalization, everyone comes away with a couple, 2 or 3 good losses. I don't know how you keep both Alabama and Georgia out, assuming that one is undefeated and one has 1 loss. Again, that loss being to the #1 or #2 team in the country. I don't think you keep them both out.
The strength of schedule argument there is just so powerful.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to come against. That's it.
Yeah, by the end of the season, we'll see what the rankings are in the SEC. But Alabama could go into the playoff weekend, the selection weekend, with 9 wins against ranked opponents. That's something that other teams are not going to have. Even Georgia, because Georgia's on the SEC East and they don't have the same concentration of those teams that the West Side does. So we'll see. And again, Georgia's big landmark win was over Clemson, who's no longer ranked. So are they for real? I really don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Now Georgia's next landmark win is against Arkansas, which Georgia made look very, very human. Right. So the college football transitive property, if you will, doesn't always pan out, because Arkansas could continue to either look really good, and maybe that was just an anomaly against Georgia, and maybe they run into the other buzzsaw when they play Alabama, or kind of the wheels fall off for Arkansas as teams start to figure them out. But you touched on Cincinnati. I'm somebody, I'm not a UCF fan, as my allegiances lie elsewhere with Wheaton College, among other teams, which some of those teams just have 1 win, a la the Florida State Seminoles. But being in the vicinity of UCF, it's hard not to kind of follow them and things like that. So I do have a soft spot for those Group of 5 teams. And could you see a scenario in which an undefeated Cincinnati gets left out of the playoffs, or would you be very surprised if an undefeated Cincinnati gets left out? I mean, are you kind of seeing that as a lock for a playoff berth?
If they go undefeated, then I would be shocked if they get left out. One, because they have a couple good quality wins this year, including over Notre Dame, which
That's huge.
I root for Michigan twice a year. That's once against Ohio State and once against Notre Dame. I have no soft spots anywhere in my body for Notre Dame. But the committee says they're good. Cincinnati beat them pretty handily, if you saw that game. And with a lack of other more pedigreed teams with an obvious resume, I don't see how you keep them out this year if they go undefeated the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, especially from a press perspective,
Mm-hmm.
over the past couple of years since college football player off has been a thing. Anytime that there is an undefeated team, there's almost outrage that they wouldn't be involved in the playoff to some degree. Like, remember,
Yes.
like even with
You talking UCF?
there was UCF, there was even a couple of years back, I think it was before college football playoff existed, but
Boise
with
State?
Mac-10, Boise, and I'm thinking of Northern Illinois, NIU.
No, well, NIU, they went to the Orange Bowl and they got blown out.
They got blown out, but there was that conversation of they deserve the shot.
Yeah, but I think an FCS school is going to have a really hard time making that transition. Whereas at least the group of 5 schools like Cincinnati or Houston went back,
But yeah,
before
that-
Lamar
that's
Jackson ended
part
their
of the
dreams.
point that I have of like that
Yeah.
is it's different than like Mac-10.
Yeah, yes, I think it's very different, and the caliber of opponent, the resume. I think,
It's a totally different
yeah.
league.
I mean, I think
League,
UCF
literally a
UCF
freaking
is still having their 7th national championship parade from a couple years ago. So I think they got their chance are done. But
Yeah.
I think Cincinnati, they've done enough, and they play good enough opponents that I just don't see it. I don't see a 2-loss Ohio State getting in over them. I don't see
there
it.
would be outrage.
Yeah, I don't see a 2-loss Oregon getting in. I just don't. So yeah, I think it'd be really hard given the field and how the previously believed unbeatable Giants have already fallen.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great point. And to that point, I would agree that an undefeated Cincinnati in this landscape of college football should be in the playoffs, especially because, as we've seen, Oregon just fell and no one's giving the Pac-12 any credit. Clemson is no longer ranked, and that was the ACC's best chance of getting a team in. Oklahoma has really, really struggled. They have not blown the doors off of anybody. In fact, weren't they chanting? I believe the student section was chanting for Spencer Rattler's backup last week.
Yep, they were booing the starting quarterback to come out of the game, and they're still undefeated. If Oklahoma remains undefeated, even without controlling any game, they'll get in.
Oh, 100%. I guess my point, though, is this is a great year for a team like an undefeated Cincinnati to at least get that shot for that group of 5 team to make it into the playoffs, because you have at least 2 of the big 5 conferences, Power 5 conferences, really taking a step backwards as it relates to their top teams. So there's nobody from the Pac-12 or ACC really stepping up. And, the SEC has enough street cred to get 2 teams in, but that's really the only conference that has enough street cred to get 2 teams in. Big Ten's not gonna get 2 teams in.
Especially, I mean, if you think of the Big 12, I mean, who even theoretically could get in the playoffs right now? Oklahoma and no one else, as it stands right now. And Oklahoma and Texas are both moving to the SEC. So I mean,
Oklahoma this year.
Yeah, and the ACC right now with Clemson out of it, who could possibly even theoretically make the playoffs now? But does North Carolina have only 1 loss? I mean, if
North Carolina has 1 loss. Let's see. NC State has 1 loss at number 23 in the country. The highest ranked team in the ACC is the 5-0. Wait for it. Wake Forest Demon Deacons.
So Demon Deacons are going to get steamrolled.
I take it all back. So Wake Forest, undefeated Wake Forest, is a lock for the playoffs. Yes, you heard it here first. Breaking news.
If they're undefeated.
Right. So yeah, I think it really comes down to how does the Big Ten shape up? that will solidify a lot of the landscape for playoffs, I think. But and like you just said, Tommy, I think SEC has enough of the street cred that all of the other good conference teams want to come there just to bask in the glow that is the street cred. So
Well,
yeah,
that
I don't
and
see
you
anyone
just
else getting them.
I think the argument for increased competition leading better programs
Yes,
Mhm.
is undeniable.
the ability to recruit. So in the
Absolutely.
SEC, I mean, how many people would give up a spot at a better team just to go to an inferior SEC team?
The fact that you can even talk about a college football conference like that of, hey, are you going to play in the SEC versus school X or Y
Exactly.
is incredibly powerful. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we're about Ole Miss or other places. Like, yeah, they have some history, but part of it is that they're in the SEC.
Yep.
You're gonna get looks. You're gonna get fans. You're gonna get exposure that you won't get anywhere else.
And for that exact reason, fourth hot take of the day, I think Clemson going down and kind of getting embarrassed this way, that's going to hurt the ACC.
Yeah.
Because now it seems like the conference itself is taking a hit, and I think it's going to be hard to get some of those recruits. But of course, you have enough East Coast solid football players that they'll still want to stay domestic. You know, people in North Carolina are still going to want to go to North Carolina,
Right.
and people in the South Carolina are still going to want to go to Clemson. But I think the prestige of being an ACC football player has been damaged, and some of those top tier recruits are going to end up going to the SEC because they're not going to see the
And
point.
if they don't turn around in the next couple of years, are you thinking that there's a fluke that they had over like Trevor Lawrence, that kind of stuff? Like, oh, they just had an incredible class
Right.
during this incredible
Deshaun
time.
Watson, Trevor Lawrence, but
Right.
now that they're both gone, the place is done. I think if Clemson's defense coordinator, Brett Venables, if he goes to be a head coach somewhere, Clemson's done. You heard it here first.
More things that we heard here first on Friends Stream Sports. Love it, love it, love it. And as we no, I think you hit on a lot of great points there, right? As you know, Clemson being the bellwether ACC school, you know, there still might be some South Florida guys that get to Miami, but they really haven't put it all together yet. You know, Charlie, you and I have had this conversation before. I think in the ACC, one of the things that strategically on the whiteboard that penciled out was they kind of said, okay, if Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Clemson all were at least top 25 programs, with one of those programs being a national title contender, that's all the ACC needs.
Yep.
And with Florida State being absolutely horrible, Miami still not having it put together, Virginia Tech, you know, being a shadow of themselves. And if Clemson takes that step back, I think the ACC as a conference is going to be in some real trouble on the football side of things, and could fall victim to some conference realignment that does not go their favor.
There's
So
precedent there too. So look at when USC got the death penalty, same thing happened to the Pac-12.
Mhm.
I think the same thing could happen with Clemson going down. And if they don't pull it around next year, I think that will be a trend that will make anxious any potential recruits for the future.
No doubt, no doubt. So as we kind of close out our top 10 talk here in college football, I'm going to read to you the AP top 10 as it stands right now. And it's kind of our last question here with this portion is there anyone that you think is overrated? And is there anyone that you think is underrated? And on the underrated side, as I read the AP top 10, underrated could be, Connor, why did you not read this name off? So our AP top 10 as it stands is number 1, Alabama, number 2, Georgia, number 3, Iowa, number 4, Penn State, number 5, Cincinnati, number 6, Oklahoma, number 7, Ohio State, number 8, Oregon, number 9, Michigan, and number 10, BYU.
So I think the overrated is going to be clearly Oklahoma and BYU. I don't think any of those teams are underrated. Or excuse me, underrated. I think with what happened to Ohio State at the hands of Oregon, I think that's damaged them. I think Oregon's most recent failure is going to even solidify that loss as not a great win. Not a quality loss. I can't think of any teams that, off the top of my head, would definitely deserve to be in there that aren't. I'm curious to see how Michigan plays out. Again, not a big Michigan fan, but I do think that Michigan being good is good for the sport. I think them being able to mix it up with some higher quality teams, it's just fun. Michigan is one of those historic pedigree programs that it's just fun to see them not suck. I think that is fun, and I'm curious to see what happens between Iowa and Penn State. But of course, because it's 3 versus 4, whoever wins is not going to drop very low because it will be seen as a quality loss. I'm curious what Michigan State's going to do. They had they had a near miss. I think it was against Nebraska. It took 1 or 2 overtimes to pull away on that one. But they're undefeated, and I like that. I am a little bit of a Michigan State fan. But I can't think of anyone that would definitely deserve to be in the top 10. What do you think?
I'd agree with that. I think it'll be interesting to reflect on this top 10 late in the season, pre-playoffs, like what this would be. Like Notre Dame, absolutely not. And I come from an opposite side of soft spot for Notre Dame. Two of my in-laws have gone there, been able to go to games, like storied history, really cool vibe, but no, they're not in there. I agree with you of the Michigan State. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And Michigan Ohio State is always a game that you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'll be a factor. Mm-hmm. And I begrudgingly agree with you on the Michigan side of Michigan being good is good for college athletics. Mm-hmm. And I say that with basketball too. Mm-hmm. But I love seeing Michigan lose, but too many times is problematic. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll be interesting. I wonder what is going to happen within that conference if Illinois actually puts things together. That's been the conversation for years.
Hot take, they won't.
So my father-in-law is a donor there and former player. And
someone citing his sources. Nice.
Yeah, no, the amount of money and the amount of just resources that they've put into that program is incredible and inspiring. And like Lovie Smith's vision and all that kind of stuff. And not a thing has panned out.
No, I think
like it's awful. They're doing like customized nutrition for every player. And programs, and it just like shows the argument of this strength of program, strength of schedule that we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, when it comes to Illinois, that was the team growing up. That's my quote unquote home team. And growing up, I would have loved to play football there. I think that would have been a lot of fun, and I would have won. I've done the math. I would have won 6 games in my 4-year tenure with the program, given when I went to college. And so that would have been hard. And so when I look at this as, or from the perspective of a potential recruit. If you're a recruit, why would you go be an Illini? Why would you do it? Well, I want to play Big Ten football. Well, within a 3-hour drive, there's 3 or 4 significantly better programs. So are you going just because you love the school? Okay, you're going to go. Those kind of kids are going to go there. Maybe their family member, like you said, your father-in-law went there. If my dad went there, that would be a good argument. If I'm going because I want to play top tier college football, maybe as a stepping stone into the NFL, if I really have those aspirations, I'm going to a better program. I just am. And no matter how much money you put in the weight room or power bars, I don't see that changing for a recruit.
I agree. And I think that it reinforces our earlier conversation about the SEC and the moves there. So all in all, top 10, I think it makes sense. AP knows a hell of a lot more than I do.
I hope that Arkansas is for real. I would like to think that Georgia got up on them early and they were just shell shocked and couldn't put it together. I like to think that because I want them. Again, a good Arkansas team is good for college football. It's good for the SEC. It's better to have. I think that really contributes to the legend that is the conference. is that, hey, even our bad teams are good. You know,
Right. And
we can talk about
Razorbacks
Vanderbilt another
have-
time, but
they know
you
their
know,
stuff.
when we got Arkansas, that for a while they were a 4-8 team every year, and it's nice to see them at least mixing it up. You know, they embarrassed Texas game 1, and they're not a bad team. So again, I like to think that Arkansas lost the game against Georgia more than Georgia won it, but of course that's never fair. And if I were a Georgia fan, I'd be saying just the opposite. But I hope that they are better than that last game really showed.
I'm so looking forward to
No doubt. And I think, just stylistically, as there's a bunch of offensive linemen here on the screen, we can all be very appreciative of the style of football that Arkansas plays. They play a very, and I'm going to quote a real legend here on this podcast here tonight, a real Walt Whitehead style of football.
Yes.
Bring your brass knuckles, your bike chain and your cousin Leo, and get ready for a back alley street fight.
Friend of the show, Walt Whitehead.
Pardon me. Yes. And that's kind of the style that Arkansas plays. I think that, and we've talked about this a lot. I think the Big Ten, there are a lot of highly ranked Big Ten teams in the top 10, and that is going to thin itself out, which is going to, by the end of the season, is going to, maybe create a backdoor conversation for, Oklahoma State's undefeated, right? There could be a bedlam game with an undefeated Oklahoma and an undefeated Oklahoma State that could have a lot of big time implications, right? Michigan still has to play Michigan State, or Michigan State does to play Michigan and Ohio State. All those teams still have to play each other. So I can see the Big Ten kind of thinning each other out, and potentially Arkansas making that leap up there into the top 10, depending on how they play Alabama.
Yep.
The Coastal Carolina Chanticleers are undefeated. I think that they still have a lot more winning to do before they could really be taken seriously for a college football playoff spot. But, an undefeated Coastal Carolina being in the top 10, they have Division I players on their team. So we're into that here.
0 ranked opponent schedule.
they're the Chanticleer.
The Coastal Carolina Chandeliers, need to play a few more teams.
Chanticleer.